Bring the diggers before the sun sits down. I want those 2 graves emptied tonight. Uncle Obinna's voice rolled across the compound like thunder chasing goats. Behind him, 4 young men leaned on shovels near the small mango tree, and beyond them, 2 mounds of red earth waited under a cloth sky. On those mounds sat cracked headstones, and on those headstones were 2 names Adaeze had whispered every single morning of her life, her mother and her father. You will not touch my parents, Adaeze.
This land belongs to all of us.
Shouting was for people who still believed noise could.
Here is the proof.
She stepped forward in her green wrapper, dust already climbing her ankles, and she raised a brown folder above her head so the whole compound could see it. Uncle, before your boys lift 1 grain of that soil, answer me this.
You have no right
How
to
did
dig
my
this
father
grave.
sign a land agreement in February when we buried him the year before, in the rainy season? The compound went silent. Even the wind seemed to lean in. Do not go anywhere, because the person who forged that signature was standing in this very crowd, smiling, holding a bottle of cold malt like a man at a wedding. If you have ever watched someone try to steal the dead to rob the living, tell me the name of your town in the comments. And stay with me, because what this woman pulled out of that folder next made a rich man's hands begin to shake. Let me take you back, 7 weeks earlier. Adaeze Nwosu woke before the birds, the way she had woken every day since she was 9 years old. In the village of Umuoji, morning did not arrive gently. It arrived with the smell of wet earth, the cough of an old generator 2 houses down, and the far cry of a rooster that had never once been on time. She tied her wrapper, poured water over her face from a clay pot, and walked out to the small patch of land behind her hut where her tomatoes, her ugu leaves, her peppers, and her yams grew in stubborn, beautiful rows. This garden fed her. More than that, it had buried her parents with dignity, paid her school fees to the end of secondary school, and it now stood between her and the kind of poverty that swallows women whole in villages where a woman without a husband or a father is treated like a door anyone may push open. She was 26. Her hands were rough, her back was strong, and her eyes had learned early to measure people the way she measured seeds, by what they would become, not by how they looked in the palm. By 6 o'clock, she had already filled 2 wide basins, one with tomatoes red, as a fresh wound, the other with green peppers. She balanced the first on her head, and she began the long walk to Eek Market. She was not walking alone in this life anymore. That was the new thing. The trembling, terrifying, wonderful new thing. His name was Emeka. Emeka drove a cake, one of those small through African roads like determined bees, carrying school children, pregnant women, traders, chickens, and everybody's problems for 50 or 100 naira a trip. He was not a rich man. His keek was not even fully his yet. He was still paying the owner in weekly installments. But Emeka had 2 things Adaeze had never seen together in one man before: a soft heart and a spine that did not bend. He had started by carrying her basins to market for free. Then he started waiting to carry her home. Then one Tuesday evening, in the orange light near the church, he had said plainly, without decoration, "Adaeze, I do not have money, but I have a plan, and I have my 2 hands, and I want to build a life with you inside it. Will you marry me?" She had laughed until she cried, and then she had said yes. The wedding was set for the last Saturday of the coming month. Small, just the church, a few relatives, jollof rice, and the 2 graves nearby so her parents could witness it too. That was the plan. That was the dream. And dreams in Umuoji had a way of attracting hungry men. The hungry man in this story was Uncle Obinna, her late father's elder brother. Obinna was the big man of the family. He wore heavy lace, drove a dark gray pickup that was always freshly washed, and he had a way of entering a room as if the room had been waiting for him. When Adaeze's father was alive, the 2 brothers had shared the family land the way brothers should. But the day they lowered her father into the ground, something changed behind Obinna's eyes. Adaeze had seen it even through her own tears. It was not grief, it was arithmetic. For years he had let it rest. He was patient the way a crocodile is patient. And now, 3 weeks before her wedding, On a Monday that had started like any other, the crocodile came out of the water. It began with a stranger. Adaeze was arranging her tomatoes at her market stall when a man in a spotless white caftan came and stood over her produce without buying. He wore sunglasses indoors, which in the village means either a musician or a thief. He looked at her for a long time. Then he said, "So you are the daughter, the one holding up progress." He smiled, dropped a folded paper on her tomatoes as if he were doing her a favor, and walked away before she could ask a single question. She unfolded the paper with shaking fingers. It was a photocopy, a land agreement. It said that the Nwosu family land, all of it, including the small plot where her parents were buried, had been sold to a company called Greenstone Estates Limited. And there at the bottom, above her father's printed name, was a signature. Her father's signature, dated the 14th of February of this year. Her father had died 2 years ago. Adaeze stood so suddenly that a basin of peppers tumbled into the dust. She did not pick them up. For the first time in her adult life, the ground under her feet felt like a lie. She called Emeka. He came within 8 minutes, his cake coughing to a stop in front of the stall, and he read the paper twice while she watched his jaw tighten. "Adaeze," he said quietly, "they are not just trying to take the land. Look where the boundary line runs." His finger traced the crude map stapled to the back. The line cut straight through the burial plot. To sell this land clean, with no wahala, they have to move the graves. They have to move your father and your mother. Something cold and very still settled inside her chest. It was the kind of stillness that comes right before a person stops begging and starts fighting. They drove straight to Uncle Obinna's compound. Obinna's compound. He was sitting on his veranda in a plastic chair that he rated like a throne, a toothpick between his teeth, watching a football match on a small television powered by his humming generator. When he saw the keek rattle through his gate, his face folded into a smile so warm and so false that Adaeze felt it like an insult. "Ada, my daughter," he sang, "and you brought the Kiki boy. Come, sit. Uncle, what is this?" She held up the paper. He barely glanced at it. He sighed like a tired teacher. "Ah, that, yes. Sit down, let me explain to you as your father would want." He leaned back. "The land is not producing anything, Ada. Small tomatoes, small pepper, is that a future?" Greenstone people came. They are building a state, big houses. They will bring light, they will bring road. They offered good money. I signed on behalf of the family, as the eldest. That is my right. "You signed my father's name," she said, "on a paper dated this year. Uncle, my father is dead. You buried him with your own hands." For 1/2 of 1 second, something flickered across Obinna's face. Then it was gone, painted over with offense. "Are you calling me a liar in my own house? Eh? A small girl who sells vegetable is now coming to teach me law?" He stood. He was a big man, and he used his size the way some men use a knife. "Let me tell you the real matter. You will not marry that cake boy." The words landed strangely, sideways, and it took Adaeze a moment to understand them. "What?" "The marriage," Obinna said, waving his hand as if brushing away a fly, "will not happen. I have found a better arrangement. Chief Dozie, the one who brought Greenstone here, he is interested in you. A grown man, a serious man. If you marry into his house, the land matter becomes a family matter. Everything is smooth, everybody eats." He smiled again. "You will call off this nonsense wedding. You will thank me later." Adaeze understood then, completely, the shape of the thing that had come for her. It was not only about land. She too was being sold. She was part of the parcel. "And if I refuse?" she asked. Uncle Obinna's smile did not move, but his voice dropped low and flat, the way a snake goes quiet before it strikes. "If you refuse," he said, "then the graves are on land that now belongs to Greenstone, and Greenstone wants to start building next month. Bodies that are in the way of progress, my daughter, they get moved. Sometimes carefully. Sometimes," he shrugged, "not so carefully. It would be a shame if your mother's bones ended up somewhere you could never find them." Beside Adaeze, Emeka rose from his chair. He did not raise his hand. He did not raise his voice. He only said, "Sir, You have said enough for one day." And he took Adaeze gently by the arm and walked her out through the gate, past the young men and the shovels, into the fading light. In the keek, on the bumpy road home, Adaeze finally broke, not loudly. The tears simply rolled down and dripped onto her hands. Emeka drove with one hand and held her wrist with the other. "They think we are small," she whispered. "They think because we are poor, we will be quiet." Emeka nodded slowly, watching the road. "Then let us be poor," he said, and loud and correct. "Adaeze, we are not going to fight him with anger. Anger is fast, but the court is patient. We are going to fight him with paper." He forged one paper. "So he has taught us the weapon already. We will bring true papers, so many true papers that his one lie drowns." She looked at this man, this cake driver with 50 naira in his pocket and a spine of iron, and she understood why she had said yes. That night they did not sleep. They made a list. First, the truth of the death. Adaeze still had her father's burial documents, the hospital paper that recorded the day he died, and the photographs from the funeral, printed and kept in a biscuit tin wrapped in cloth. If her father died in the rainy season 2 years ago, he could not have signed anything in February of this year. That single fact was a wall the lie would have to climb, and it could not. Second, the truth of the land. The original land documents. Her father, God rest him, had been a careful man. He had once told her, "Ada, in this country, the person who keeps the paper keeps the land." She did not know where the originals were, but she knew who might. Her father's old friend, Pa Nadi, the retired court clerk who lived at the edge of the village and remembered where every boundary in Umuoji had been drawn since before Adaeze was born. Third, the truth of the signature. A signature can be compared, and Adaeze had a lifetime of her father's handwriting, letters, an old Bible with his notes in the margins, a savings passbook. By morning, they had a plan, and Emeka's keke had a new purpose. For the next 3 weeks, that little 3-wheeled machine became a courtroom on wheels, carrying evidence, carrying witnesses, carrying 2 poor people toward something the rich man never expected them to reach. The truth properly filed, properly stamped, and impossible to bury. They went first to Pa Nadi. The old man lived alone in a house full of files. When Emeka's keke pulled up, Pa Nadi was on his veranda, drinking bitter cola and reading a newspaper from 6 days ago. He listened to Adaeze without interrupting, his old eyes growing sharper with every sentence. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Your father was a good man. He came to me before he fell sick. He said, 'Natty, my brother's eyes are too long. Keep my papers. If anything happens, give them only to Adaeze.'" Adaeze could not breathe. "You have them?" Pa Nadi rose slowly, went inside, and came back with a large brown envelope, soft with age. Inside were the original title documents for the Nwosu family land, showing clearly that the burial plot and the surrounding acres had passed to Adaeze's father, and after him, by his own written wish, to Adaeze. Not to Obinna, never to Obinna. He knew, Adaeze whispered. He knew his brother would try. He knew, Pa Nadi agreed. But knowing a snake is in the grass does not stop the grass from growing. You must take these to the land registry. Today. Before your uncle knows they still exist. And take photographs of everything first, my daughter. In this country, originals have a way of catching fire when powerful men are nearby. They photographed every page. They made copies at a business center. They emailed copies to Adaeze, to Emeka, to Pa Nadi's nephew in the city. Then, with the originals wrapped in cloth and held on Adaeze's lap, the keek buzzed off toward the local government registry. The registry was a crowded, slow ceiling fan kind of place, where files were tied with string and nothing moved quickly. They waited 3 hours. When they finally reached the desk, the clerk, a tired woman with reading glasses, pushed up on her forehead, took one look at the greenstone photocopy and then at the originals. And something changed in her posture. "Where did you get this?" she asked, tapping the greenstone copy. "A man gave it to me in the market," Adaeze said. "He said the land is already sold." The clerk lowered her voice. "This transaction was lodged here 2 months ago. I remember it because the man who brought it, a big man in white, was very impatient, very free with his money. She glanced left and right. I am not supposed to say this, but there is no proper day register entry to match it. The consent page is stamped, but the stamp does not follow the correct sequence. And the identity document attached for the seller. She pulled a slim file, opened it, and turned it toward Adaeze. Belongs to a man declared dead 2 years ago. Somebody was in a hurry, and hurry leaves fingerprints. Adaeze felt her heart pounding. Will you help us? The clerk looked at her for a long time. My own mother, she said finally, was cheated out of her land when my father died. Nobody helped her. She died a tenant on land that was hers. She took a breath. Register your originals today, properly, and get a lawyer, because a lie big does not fall down from one push. But I will make sure the true record is on this desk when the questions come. That evening, for the first time in weeks, Adaeze slept. But Uncle Obinna was not sleeping. He was counting. The next morning, 3 of the family elders arrived at Adaeze's hut. They did not come with cola and friendship. They came with warnings dressed as advice. The eldest, a man with a walking stick and a voice like dry leaves, sat on her only good chair and cleared his throat. Ada, he began, we hear there is small misunderstanding between you and your uncle. He forged my dead father's signature, she said. That is not small. The old man raised a hand. You are young. You do not know how family land matters work. Sometimes the eldest must make decisions. Money has come, good money. And this marriage to Chief Dozie, it is an honor. A keke driver? What can a keke driver give you? Your uncle is thinking of your future. My future, Adaeze repeated slowly. By digging up my mother. The elders shifted. One of them looked at the floor. Not one of them, she noticed, could hold her eyes. These are big grammar you are speaking, the old man said, standing. A woman who fights her elders will find herself alone. Think well. The wedding you are planning, cancel it, before it brings shame. They left. And within a day, the whispers began to move through Umuoji like smoke under a door. Adaeze, the vegetable seller, had become proud. Adaeze had rejected a chief for a cake boy. Adaeze was disturbing the peace of the family, dragging the dead into disgrace, refusing to let progress come to the village. Not one of the whispers asked the only question that mattered on. How does a dead man sign a paper? Then the whispers turned to teeth. On a Thursday afternoon, 2 policemen came to the market. They told Adaeze there was a complaint against her, that she had stolen important family documents from her uncle's house, and that she must come with them to the station. Her hands went cold. But Emeka, who had been waiting nearby as he always did now, stepped forward calmly. Officer said, we will come. Gladly. And we will bring our lawyer. It was a bluff. They did not yet have a lawyer. But the word lawyer, spoken with a straight back, changed the temperature of the moment. At the station, Uncle Obinna was already seated beside an officer, comfortable, a big man in a big chair. He claimed Adaeze had broken into his home and stolen original land documents. The officer, half listening, asked Adaeze, is this true? Did you take documents from his house? No, sir, Adaeze said. I have never entered his house except through the front gate, in daylight, with witnesses. The documents I have are my late father's originals, kept safe by his friend Pa Nanadi, a retired clerk of this very local government, for 2 years. I can bring him. He will tell you who gave them and why. The officer turned to Obinna. Which specific document is missing from your house? Obinna opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. The land file, he said. Do you have a list of what was taken? A broken door? A window? Any witness who saw her enter? She is a very clever girl, Obinna said. She would not leave a mark. The officer put down his pen. He had been in this job a long time, and he knew the smell of a big man using a small station as his private tool. Sir, he said, you have a complaint with no evidence against a woman who is holding original documents and offering to bring a witness. That is not a theft. That is a land dispute, and land disputes go to court, not to my cell. He looked at Adaeze. Go home. Get your lawyer. Let the court decide. As Adaeze and Emeka turned to leave, Uncle Obinna leaned close to her ear. And in a voice too low for the officer to hear, he said, "You think paper will save you? I have money. Money talks in this country, and it never runs out of things to say. Cancel the wedding, or by the time your court finishes, there will be no graves left to argue about." Adaeze turned and looked him full in the face. "Uncle," she said just as quietly, "you have just told me you plan to move the graves before the court can rule. Thank you. I will remember those words. And so, I think, will he?" She tilted her head toward the officer's open door, where the man had in fact heard every word and was now writing something down. Obinna's face changed color. The lawyer came into their lives through the church. A young woman named Barrister Ngozi, sharp as a blade, who had grown up in a village like Umuoji and had watched her own aunties get cheated, and who took Adaeze's case for a fee so small, it was almost a gift. She spread all the papers on her small office table, the burial records, the hospital certificate, the funeral photographs, the original land title, the registry clerk's quiet note about the mismatched stamp, the forged greenstone copy, and she looked at them for a long, long time. "Adaeze," she said at last, "I am not going to promise you victory, but I am going to tell you what you have. You have a dead man's signature on a living man's contract. You have original title that names you, not your uncle. You have a registry official who noticed the fraud. And now, thanks to that station officer, you have your uncle on record threatening to destroy the graves, which are the physical evidence, before a ruling. Adaeze, they did not just try to steal, they left a trail a blind man could follow with his fingers." "Then we can win?" Emeka asked. "We can fight," Ngozi corrected. "And we can fight well, but hear me. People who are used to buying silence become very dangerous when the calendar starts closing on them. Your wedding is in 2 weeks. Their deadline to start building is in 3. These 2 dates are going to collide. Be careful. Do not travel alone. Do not eat food you did not cook. And whatever happens," she looked hard at both of them, "do not put your bodies in front of a machine. Put paper in front of it. Paper wins slowly, but a broken body wins nothing." She filed 2 things at once. An urgent application to freeze the land, halting any sale, construction, or disturbance of the graves until the court could rule. And a formal petition laying out the forgery, attaching every document, naming Greenstone Estates and Chief Dozie and Uncle Obinna. The freeze order was granted on a Friday, but paper travels slower than greed. The enrolled copy, the one that had to be physically served on Obinna and Greenstone, would not be ready to serve until Monday morning. And Uncle Obinna, who still had a friend at the registry whispering in his ear, learned about the order on Friday night. So he decided to act before Monday. It was Marcus, of all people, who warned them. Marcus was Obinna's own son, a quiet young man of 24, who had spent his whole life in the shadow of his father's loud certainty. For weeks he had watched, said nothing, done what he was told, entered figures in his father's rent books, kept his eyes down. But Marcus had also loved his aunt and uncle, the dead ones, when he was a boy. He remembered Adaeze's mother slipping him roasted corn over the fence. He remembered her father teaching him to fish. At 11 o'clock on Saturday night, Emeka's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. 7 words. "Machines coming to the graves, Sunday dawn." Then the message deleted itself. But Emeka had already taken a screenshot. They did not sleep. They called Barrister Ngozi, who called the court officer, who agreed to meet them at the graves at first, official order in hand, even though it was not yet Monday, because a threat to destroy evidence changes what the law is willing to do at dawn. And so we come back to where we began. Sunday morning. The sky the color of ash. Adaeze in her green wrapper, Emeka beside her, the little keke parked crooked by the gate, as if it too were holding its breath. And in the compound, Uncle Obinna in fresh white lace, 4 young men with shovels, a yellow digging machine grumbling black smoke, and Chief Dozie himself, fat and golden with rings, leaning against his car with a bottle of cold malt, come to watch his investment cleared of its inconvenient dead. "Bring the diggers," Obinna had roared. "I want those 2 graves emptied tonight." "You will not touch my parents," Adaeze had answered, and raised the folder and asked her question, and the compound had gone silent. Now watch what she pulled from the folder. First, the hospital certificate. This says, "My father died on the 9th of the rainy season 2 years ago." She held it high, turning slowly so the gathering crowd, neighbors drawn by the noise, could see. Uncle carried the coffin. Half of you were there. Second, the greenstone contract. This says my father signed away our land in February this year. A man who has been in the ground for 2 years reached up through the soil, took a pen, and signed. A ripple moved through the crowd. Someone laughed, then covered their mouth. Third, the original title. And this, stamped and registered 2 days ago at the local government in front of witnesses, is the true title. My father's land came to me, not to my uncle. His name is nowhere on it. He had no land to sell. He sold what was never his, using the name of a dead man. And now he wants to hide the crime by scattering the bones of the only 2 witnesses who can never lie, my mother and my father. Lies. Obinna bellowed, but his voice had lost its thunder. She forged all of it. Start the machine. The digger driver reached for his lever, and Adaeze's heart lurched. And then a new voice cut across the compound, calm, official, unhurried. Nobody touches that ground. The court officer stepped through the gate, identity card held high, Barrister Ngozi at his side, in a dark suit, a sealed envelope in her hand. Behind them, the same station officer from before, in uniform, with 2 constables. The officer read the Fry's order aloud, slowly, every word landing like a stone in still water. No sale, no construction, no disturbance of the burial ground, pending the ruling of the court. He held the envelope out to Obinna. Obinna would not take it. So the officer set it down at his feet and noted, out loud, for the record, that service had been refused. Chief Dozie set down his malt very carefully, got into his car, and drove away without a word. He had come to watch a clearing. He would not stay to watch a crime. "Start the machine," Obinna said again, but now it was almost a whisper, a man arguing with the tide. The digger driver climbed down from his seat. "Oga," he said, wiping his hands. "Court matter is not my own," and he walked out through the gate. One by one, the 4 young men dropped their shovels and followed him, and then Marcus stepped forward. "Papa," he said. His voice shook, but he did not stop. He turned to face the crowd, to face the neighbors, the elders, the officers. "My father forged the signature. I saw the man who did it, the same man who brought the money. My father paid him. I entered the amount in the book myself. He told me it was family business. It was not business, it was theft. And the marriage to Chief Dozie was not an honor. It was part of the price. Adaeze was being sold with the land." "Marcus," Obinna's face was a ruin. "You useless boy, after everything I have done for you." Marcus looked at his father, and for the first time in his life, he did not look away. "What did you do for Auntie and Uncle?" he said quietly, "except try to dig them up." The question landed harder than any slap. And Uncle Obinna, the big man, the crocodile, the throne-sitter, had no answer. He stood in the middle of his own compound in his fresh white lace, and he saw, at last, that there was not one single face turned toward him with respect. The neighbors were staring, Cordy staring toward the ground. The elders had drifted toward the gate. His own son stood on the other side, with the vegetable seller and the keke driver. He had never been so rich in money, and so completely publicly poor. The court case took 4 months. Barrister Ngozi did not rush it, and she did not decorate it. She laid the papers before the judge one by one, the death certificate, the forged contract, the true title, the registry clerk's testimony about the mismatched stamp and the dead man's identity card, Marcus's sworn statement, the police record of Obinna's threat at the station. The forger, when he was traced through the money, confessed to save himself and named Obinna as the one who had paid and instructed him. Chief Dozie's company, Greenstone Estates, claimed it had bought in good faith. The court did not call Greenstone a thief without proof. It found instead that the title they had been sold was worthless because a man cannot sell what he does not own. And their remedy lay against Obinna, who had deceived them. Greenstone withdrew from Umuoji entirely. The estate was never built. The judgment, when it came, was read for over an hour. But the heart of it was short and hard as a stone. The Greenstone contract was declared void. The forged signature was declared a criminal forgery, referred to the authorities for prosecution. The land was confirmed as Adaeze's, all of it, the acres and the burial plot together. A permanent order was made forbidding Obinna, forever, from selling, disturbing, or so much as touching the graves. And Obinna was ordered to repay the money he had taken from Greenstone and to bear the costs of the case. Then the judge set down the papers, removed his glasses, and spoke not as a court, but as a man. Land can be returned by this court, he said. Money can be repaid in installments. But there is a thing this case is truly about, and it is older than any title. In our lands, we say the dead are not gone. They have only gone ahead. To rob the living is a crime. But to threaten the graves of the dead, to use a mother's bones as a bargaining chip, that is a sickness of the spirit that no money can cure and no estate can be built upon. A family is not a business to be inherited by the loudest man, and a woman is not part of a parcel of land to be sold along with the soil. Let it be recorded. Adaeze wept then, quietly, and Emeka held her hand. And somewhere in that courtroom 2 people who had gone ahead were, she believed with all her heart, finally able to rest. So what happened to the crocodile? The fall of Uncle Obinna was not a single crash. It was slow, and it was complete, the way a great tree that has been eaten from the inside finally goes over in an ordinary wind. He sold the gray pickup to pay the first installment of what he owed. Then he sold the lace, the television, the generator. The elders removed him from his seat as head of the family. At the next gathering, he was given a chair at the side, and no one waited for him to speak before they began. The forgery case moved through the courts at its own pace, and though it was slow, it did not stop. And it hung over the rest of his days like a cloud that would not clear. His wife, who had cheered him on when he was strong, packed her things and went to her sister's town when he was weak. Marcus did not go with her. Marcus stayed in Umuoji, took a small job keeping books for an honest trader, rented a single room, and rode a bicycle to work, past the very land his father had tried to steal. And one evening, about a year after the judgment, an old man in plain faded clothes came walking, on foot, up the path to Adaeze's compound. It was Obinna, thinner, smaller. His shoulders no longer filled a doorway. He stopped at the gate and did not enter. Adaeze was on her veranda, shelling beans, her wedding ring on her finger, her belly round now, with the child that was coming. Emeka's keke, fully paid off at last and freshly painted, rested by the wall. Ada, Obinna said. His voice had no thunder left in it at all. I have come to see the graves. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded, once, and led him around the side of the hut to where her mother and her father lay under clean, whitewashed headstones in ground that would never be sold. Fresh flowers grew there. A small bench sat nearby. Obinna stood before the graves for a long time. Then, slowly, painfully, the big man lowered himself to his knees in the red dust. Brother, he said to the stone, I thought the land was the inheritance. I thought if I held the land, I held the family, I held everything. His voice cracked. I was wrong. I chased the soil and I lost the people. I have no land now. I have no seat. My wife is gone. My son will not call me. And your daughter, the one I tried to sell, is the only person in this whole village who did not turn me away from her gate. He bowed his head. I was rich and I was a poor man. I see it now. I see it too late. Adaeze stood behind him, and she did not gloat, and she did not embrace him either. Some things are not that simple. Uncle, she said at last, you tried to dig up the dead. Now the dead have taught you something the living could not. That is the only justice that matters. Sit on the bench if you want to sit. You may visit them. But you will visit as a man who knows what he did. Not as the head of anything. He sat on the bench. He wept the way old men weep, without sound. And Adaeze went back to shelling her beans, and after a while, Emeka came home on the keke. And the smell of her mother's flowers drifted over the graves that no machine would ever touch. The wedding, in the end, had happened after all. Small. The church, jollof rice, a few relatives, and 2 graves nearby so her parents could witness it too. Emeka had carried her to it on the keke, decorated with palm leaves and ribbons, buzzing down the red road like the happiest bee in all of Africa. And here is the thing I want you to carry with you tonight, wherever you are watching from. They thought she was small, a vegetable seller. They thought he was nothing, a keke-driver. They thought the poor would be quiet and the dead would be silent, and the land would slide into the hands of the loud and the golden the way it so often does. But a poor woman with a true paper is stronger than a rich man with a false one. And the graves of those who loved us are not a bargaining chip. They are a foundation. Dig them up and you do not clear the ground. You only bury yourself. So check on the land your parents left you. Keep the papers your elders kept. Speak the names of your dead out loud, so no one dares to move them in the dark. And never, ever let a loud man tell you that because your hands are rough and your pockets are empty, your dignity is for sale. Because respect is not something we earn by becoming rich. It is something we owe to one another, to the living and to the dead, especially when the world is certain we are too small to fight back. Adaeze was too small to fight back. She won anyway. End.